Hello, my name is Peter and welcome back to the series where we're looking at the films in the Nativity film franchise. This time it's the finale. We're looking at Nativity Rocks, This Ain't No Silent Night, which came out in 2018, 4 years after the previous film. So the story opens with Doru and his father, who are Syrian refugees, being separated as they arrive in England. Doru ends up in Coventry and is taken under the care of social worker Sophie. Meanwhile, Jerry Poppy also turns up in Coventry and heads to St Bernadette's to find his brother, Mr Poppy. At St Bernadette's, Mrs Keane announces that they're going to be taking part in a rock opera competition to aid Coventry becoming the best Christmas in town, which is quite confusing as it's a competition within another competition. When Jerry arrives, she informs him that his brother has gone to Australia to look for his aunt. Okay, but she sees Jerry as an opportunity to help the students with their rock performance. Doru also comes to St Bernadette's and realises that taking part in the rock opera will help his dad find him, as the performance is going to be televised. Thankfully, the rest of this plot isn't so ridiculous that I feel the need to recall every detail like I did with Nativity 2 and Nativity 3, but after the obstacles the characters face, it's all a happily ever after in the end. Now, this film isn't painful. It actually acted more like a massive advert for this warm, welcoming and diverse town of Coventry than any of the other films did. It wasn't enormously entertaining, but I did chuckle along at a few moments. It felt a lot more like the first film than any of the other, and actually looking back it almost feels like a combination of the sequels, but not as bad. Funnily enough, on the back of the DVD, the description reads, "with the unique feel-good charm of the original film." It could very well have been a mistake, but it's interesting they didn't put films. I realised as well for the first time again that the kids in this film were actually really entertaining, and they were all new as well. And that was something I didn't mention with the previous films, is that they used a combination of new and old kids, and especially by Nativity 3, I was looking at the older ones like, what are you still doing here? I kind of felt sorry for them. Craig Revel Hallwood plays Emmanuel Cavendish, the mean rock opera judge, and oh my god, what does he look like? He has a bit of unresolved drama with Jerry, but they're all fine by the end. I actually remember following up on this film's production last year, and when I heard that Hugh Dennis was going to be in it, I thought he'd be the next of the actors to play the frustrated teacher role. He actually plays a busy working father of an Oakmore student who learns to stop working and enjoy Christmas with his son. Daniel Boyes plays the teacher, Mr. Johnson, in this film, and it was actually a much smaller part than usual. The main focus is actually on Jerry, who was kind of my main problem with this film. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I don't blame the old cast for coming back. I mean, even Gordon looked pretty ill in Nativity 3. And I guess after 4 years, Mark Wootton didn't really want to come back. So Jerry, played by Simon Lipkin, was not as funny. He was annoying, but not in the entertaining way that Mr. Poppy was. But hang on a sec, these guys look familiar. Yeah, believe it or not, Simon Lipkin and Daniel Boyes played Mr. Poppy and Mr. Maddens in Nativity the Musical when it began touring in 2017. And when I realised this, it really made me question the entire production of this film. Maybe Debbie Izzet saw this cast and thought that just another film instalment could be squeezed out. But even then, Simon Lipkin still felt familiar because, oh my god, he played one of Santa's elves in Nativity 3. I guess they weren't really bothered about linking these two characters together, but to be honest, does anyone really care at this point? The music, again, is by Nicky Ager. The soundtrack is better, the kids' voices aren't auto-tuned, which is just a massive improvement, but some of the songs, and actually parts of the film, really reminded me of when I went to see School of Rock the musical. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film got 0% from the critics and 50% from the audience, which is pretty harsh, because given the choice, I probably wouldn't watch this film again, but it definitely beats Nativity 3 and probably beats Nativity 2. The film made $4.1 million at the box office from an unknown budget. This is significantly less, and to be honest, I'm not too surprised as there was a longer gap between this and the last film. For the first film, its heart was in the best place and it proved really nicely in its execution. For Nativity 2, its heart was in the place where its brain really should have been. Nativity 3 had something very different This film does have its heart in the right place, even if some parts are slightly too sugar-coated and quite ideological. Nativity 2, and especially Nativity 3, were so problematic that I couldn't even begin to suggest improvements, but for this film, I can see with a few more like adult-friendly jokes or references to rock artists and albums, I can actually see it being average. So overall, this franchise shouldn't really have happened. After watching this film, I realised that the sequels should have been like this film. If Debbie Izzet really wanted to make successful sequels to the first film, she should have kept with the ending nativity performance during the last act of the film, because otherwise the stories just go completely out the window. So the question remains, will there be a Nativity 5? Debbie Izzet did say that a fifth film based in Australia was developed. It potentially links to Mr. Poppy looking for his auntie in Australia, which really doesn't make sense as she was last seen on a cruise in the Mediterranean.
She's on a Christmas cruise in the middle of the Mediterranean at the moment.
But there's been a lot of nonsense in this series, and this is probably one of the less puzzling phenomena. But maybe with the lower box office for this film and the terrible response from the critics, maybe Nativity Down Under will never see the light of day. And that concludes this series. Thank you very much for watching. Have you seen Nativity Rocks? If you have, please leave a comment below, tell me what you think. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. Next year, I'm gonna be looking at Home Alone 6. You may think it's a reboot, but in my heart, it is Home Alone 6. I'm following all the updates and I just get more excited about it every time. I can't wait, it's gonna be an absolute classic. But until then, have a wonderful Christmas, a Happy New Year. See you next time. Goodbye.